announcement there.
You're listening to Head South Radio with your host, Kat Meyer, a podcast dedicated to prioritizing pleasure and removing the stigma and shame around sex. We're here to be curious and have an open conversation about sexual health and relational wellness. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. The information discussed is not a substitute for professional medical advice.
So to get started, I like to do some icebreakers, and I'm going to do a few of the questions that I normally ask, and then I'm also going to use your questions, your cards to ask you.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is, what is your 3 astrological zodiac? Like your top, like your sun, moon, rising.
My sun is Pisces, my rising is Cancer, and my last one is Aquarius. I don't know them but I know that those are the 3 main ones.
Yeah. Oh, very watery.
Yeah, very watery. But then I have like the rest in Capricorn, so I feel like I'm like my water is like fighting with like my super type A wanting to get stuff done. It's it's like the story of my life.
Yeah. I'm kind of similar in my sun sign is Cancer, and then everything else is fire and Leo and Aries. And so I'm constantly like, the main identity, the thing that I identify with is being Cancer, but I'm actually very like totally type A, getting things done.
Yeah.
Very fiery and like outward, but then parts of me like constantly need to like rest and be emotional and feel my feelings fully. So it's kind of a polarity struggle sometimes.
Totally.
And then, do you identify is Pisces is your primary sun sign? Do you identify as a Pisces?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. What is your biggest turnoff?
Not being assertive. You know, I like it when someone like knows what they want and asks for it and takes the lead. So for me, that's the turnoff is when it's like the opposite of that.
If you could live in a fantasy world that like maybe exists in books or movies, what world would you live in? Like if it's Harry Potter land or, you know, Mordor and Lord of the Rings, like is there a fantasy world that you'd be like, I'd love to live in that space?
Oh, I never thought of that. I feel like I'd go back in time and live like, you know, in the 70s in Ibiza.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be fun.
What's your favorite sex positions?
I would say cowgirl. Sorry, my mom's here, so this is a little funny. I would say cowgirl, on all fours and missionary.
Great. I love that your mom's just chilling there, overhearing this conversation.
Oh, this is hilarious.
And these are your questions. It's your game.
Oh, that's true. These are already the questions from my deck. Yeah.
Yeah. On average, how often would you like to have partnered sex?
I think a couple times a week is solid. Like once in the weeknights, and then another one like on the weekend. And I think like when you have like quality twice a week, for me, that fulfills my needs. What about you?
Your partner agree? Actually, this is one of the questions my partner and I had when we played last night.
Okay.
And I felt like 3 to 5. Well, I said 5 originally, and he was like, I'm more of 3. And I was like, let's do like 3 to 5. Like that's kind of what we average when we are together. We're in long distance.
Yeah.
But I would say it's kind of, it just depends on where we're at and what we're doing.
Totally.
And we'll kind of dive into that. That's going to be the primary, topic of conversation you and I are having is desire discrepancy and kind of moving through that with your partner. But I would say 3 to 5 times a week.
Okay.
That being, and kind of agreeing with you of like 2 of those times being quality, a little bit slower, a little bit more sensual, and maybe 2 to 3 of those other times is like a quickie, like in the middle of the night kind of.
Exactly.
Kind of jam. Yeah. What's your favorite way to spend time after sex? I've never, I mean, aside from thinking about aftercare, I never actually thought about that for myself.
Yeah.
So what is your...
I love not having any plans. So I love like staying in bed and talking and just like enjoying the moment, grabbing a glass of wine or like, a cup of coffee or something, like depending on the time of day, obviously. And yeah, just kind of lounging around together. I feel like just enjoying those feel good hormones after sex feels really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think like lingering, like sometimes it's nice to have a quickie and then just like go off somewhere and do the activity. Like I love having sex before something, like before a date or like, but I do like that feeling of like slow kind of chatting, cuddling, connecting, lingering in the moment.
Totally. It was interesting because a girlfriend of mine who's been with her partner for more than 10 years mentioned that this specific question like unlocked a new habit for them because she had never stopped to think about it. And one thing that her husband did was like right after they finished having sex, he would get up right away and go take a shower and go on with his day. And it would not, I don't know if it would bother her because she never really stopped to think about it, but she realized that she really desired being able to like continue cuddling and enjoy that and like recap and everything. And so she shared that with her partner and now that's what they do. So it's funny how a lot of these questions, like they're so simple in nature, but we don't think about them.
Yeah, no, I definitely in playing with my partner, because we've been together almost 2 years now. And we were talking about that of like, and we have a really great communication with each other and expressing and sharing and kind of working together. But yeah, these questions prompt things that maybe you didn't even think of or like subconsciously you're like, actually, this would be nice. Like you're so in routine sometimes that it's not that it's not working, but when you think about it a little bit differently or like it comes to your attention, you're like, actually, I would like it this way, or I would like to try this.
Totally.
And so we both kind of agreed that that's kind of been really fun in playing this game. And he was like, it's kind of like Monopoly. It's never going to end.
Oh yeah. It's never going to end, which is like
this game never ends.
Yeah. Part of the selling point too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's your guilty pleasure?
I like having a glass of wine every night. That's my guilty pleasure. I feel like, in age of sobriety, like it's something that feels, but it's more of that European approach to like having one glass, like at the end of the night to like recap the day with my partner and connect and, relax. So it's something that I enjoy doing. That's, I guess, my guilty pleasure.
I like that. It's like a ritual. It's a part of that ritual and that shift in energy.
It is, and it's not unhealthy. Like I think it's a very balanced approach. Yeah,
a healthy relationship to it.
Yeah.
Would you mind introducing yourself, telling everyone who you are, what you do?
Of course. So my name is Natassia. I'm a sex educator, and I'm also the founder of Wonderlust, a sexual wellness company. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and find a greater purpose. So I ended up in the sexual wellness space. I launched my company in 2022. So it's been a couple of years and we're here. I also host an intimacy series at Soho House. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Awesome. What was your sex education like? Because you grew up in Brazil and the US?
Yeah. So I was in elementary school when I left Brazil. I think my mom was always pretty open about talking about sex, but more in the sense of like educating me so that I could, protect myself. Like somebody shouldn't touch you in the wrong places and that kind of stuff. So I think she always created that line of communication that was open, which I think is really healthy for parents to have with their kids. In school here, I just remember like having, the STI education. That's like, I don't remember the details, but I felt like I left with like, if you have sex, you're going to get STDs and you're going to get pregnant and you're going to die,
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So I'd say, it could have been better, but that was pretty much
seems
it.
like
But I've always been
standard.
curious about it. Yeah. So I spoke a lot to my friends and was just really genuinely curious about other people's experiences. And I think we have overarching themes that we all experience, but it's also so individual.
What do you think is different between the two cultures, like Brazilian culture and US culture, around sex and sex education?
I think Brazilians are very sexualized by the rest of the world, but it's a very Catholic country. And, the remnants of purity culture are very present over there, where like a woman's worth is very dependent on like how many men like she doesn't sleep with. And it's just naturally like a very macho culture. But I don't think it's so different. I feel like here women tend to be a little bit more sexually free, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's the main difference that I've noticed between cultures. But the rest of the world just has a different perception about Brazil. I think Anita might have brought that forward too.
Yeah. There's like a visual sense. It's more of like a physical sexualizing of the culture and like beach body, thongs, Brazilian waxing. Yeah. But then it's actually like, it's more conservative. I agree. Like, I haven't been to Brazil, but I agree with you of like the Catholic influence on that culture and the belief around the rest of the world is just a visual belief. And it's more of like sexualizing women.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What did your family think about the work you're doing? Like when you told them that this is what you were creating?
I think in the beginning, my mom wasn't aware, like she didn't really know what to expect, but she thought it was interesting. And today she loves my work. She's learned a lot and that's been really, my dad's passed away. So I guess I don't have to worry about him, but he was a pretty chill guy. So I feel like he'd be cool with it. But my mom has really enjoyed and loves the deck, has played it with my stepdad. And it's just been like very beautiful to see how education can really transform someone's, approach and point of view.
So yeah, how did you come to create, like concept it and then launch the game? What kind of brought all of those pieces together?
Yeah. So I've always noticed people mentioned how easily I talk about sex and how uncommon that really is. And I feel like the deck was something that really brought that forward. So you have the first level, which is more romantic, the second level, which is spicier, and it's a more tasteful and approachable way to talk about it. And like you mentioned, there are so many prompts. There's 2 levels of 69 cards each. So it feels like it never ends. And you can use it over and over and over again, during date night or trips, which is something that I really love. And I wanted to create something experiential that was truly striking. And so I partnered with a Brazilian artist who's a friend of mine too, Natalie Edinburgh, and she did the erotic artwork for it. So I ended up, so that's been a point that people have loved where you can like really decorate your coffee table with or your bedside table. And it also, I think because then it's out in the open, it reminds you to actually talk about sex more and bring that forward. So
yeah, it's so well done. I love packaging. I love product and it's so well done and so beautiful.
Thank you.
And it is on my coffee table. And even if I wasn't in this industry, I would have it on the coffee table, outside of me working in sexual wellness as well. It's so stunning. The artwork is beautiful. I think the questions are, a wide range of questions too. They're fun. There's ones that like you kind of have to pause and really think and make consideration for. And to your point of like what we discussed of, it's a never ending game. Sometimes if you play it like once every few months, your answers will change over time and like recognizing like, oh yeah, I love that. Based on your experience, you're working through, becoming a sexologist, or the last time we spoke, you were kind of working through your certification.
The certification takes 1.5 years. So it's a long certification. I'm working through it now.
So based on your experience, what are some of the most common sexual and relationship problems that long-term couples face?
boredom in bed and not enjoying the sex that they're having.
Mm-hmm.
And then also not being able to communicate about it. And couples who communicate about sex experience, more orgasms, more arousal, more erectile function, and less pain during sex. So it's really important for you to communicate about it. And because we're unable to communicate about it, then we don't express what it is that we want in bed. And so then we end up having like sex that's not worth having.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's really at the core of most people's low libido problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many different factors that can obviously impact your low libido, right? I mean, pretty much anything that you experience in life, stress, anxiety, depression, relationship satisfaction or insatisfaction, all of these things are going to impact your libido. But I think we really underestimate that a lot of people are just having sex they're not really enjoying, and they're not talking about it with their partners. I think also they just don't know how to explore different things. And so you're not aware of the possibilities out there and that it can actually feel better. And you can feel more connected with like very small adjustments,
Mm-hmm.
nothing wild.
Mm-hmm. How do you think traditional gender roles play into those dynamics and impact our intimacy and our ability to connect?
So for women, I think we're dealing with like generations of disempowerment. And so we feel, unable to really express our needs just because we were socialized like that, to place other people's needs before ours, to be caretakers. And we don't want to position ourselves too much and to be too assertive, because that can also, subconsciously impact our safety.
Mm-hmm.
So you, never really know like how the other is going to react. Obviously, this might not necessarily be in the relationship that you're in. You may have a very caring partner, but subconsciously we carry that from our upbringing. It was really interesting. There was a study in California, by a university in California. I don't remember exactly which one. And they put in a room a group of girls, and in another room, a group of boys, 8 years old. And they gave them lemonade, but they put salt in the lemonade so that it tasted bad. And the girls didn't say anything. Like, they drank it and were quiet about the whole thing, even though you could kind of notice that it was off. And the boys stated right away that, God, this is gross. Like, this tastes so bad. Like, what is this? This isn't lemonade. And when they ended up interviewing afterwards, the girls were like, well, we didn't want to hurt his feelings. And, we didn't want to be rude. And, they're 8 years old. And so I think it's really interesting because we already carry that from so early on that it's going to obviously impact like how you assert yourself at work and how you assert yourself with your partner and in the bedroom. So the struggle is real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for boys, they've been socialized to speak out and to be assertive and be aggressive. And I think just in general, like, because women, obviously these are more heteronormative dynamics, but if women are catering to their needs, then, they know that if they just ask for what they want, it's going to happen. And then there's obviously the just natural biological function that in general for them, it's easier to orgasm with penetration. And we've been unfortunately brought up to believe that that's the main way to have sex. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of perpetuates this. And the problem with that is because also men are expected to be the main providers and to like essentially know the answers to everything, they have a hard time even asking for what you want because they feel like they should know. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm being vulnerable, which is such an important part of, good intimacy, what does that say about me? Does that mean that I'm weak? Does it mean that I don't know the answers, that I don't know how to satisfy my woman? So I think these are all the things that end up really impacting our ability to communicate from both sides of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for men, that experience of vulnerability and curiosity, like what you're saying of like they should know, like, or it's supposed to be built into them, but a lot of men maybe don't feel that way, or a little bit more sensitive, or don't, I think a lot of men even now are like in my conversations with previous guests, it's like this pressure to know and a pressure to want to satisfy their partner, but then their partner doesn't know how to express what their needs are. There's a blockage there of, based on, masculine and feminine kind of constructs and stereotypes that kind of get people stuck in this like inability to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then something that happens, there are like two main fears of why we're unable to communicate what we want. One is the fear of your partner looking at you differently and being rejected, essentially. And the other is the fear of losing the relationship altogether. And the longer that you're together, the higher the stakes. So it just becomes easier for you to throw it under the rug and not deal with it. And it's so interesting because I recently had this Q&A on my Instagram, and someone mentioned, like, I've been faking my orgasms for the last 3 years. Like, how do I communicate that to my partner? And I ended up doing a poll, and the poll was based on a DM that I got from a friend of mine that's like, oh, my answer would have been different from yours. I obviously mentioned that you should have an open and honest communication about it. You're wanting to start fresh and you want to build a healthier sex life and feel more fulfilled, and like be honest about the reasons why you are unable to express why you couldn't come. And it's just so normal. Like when you're opening up about something so sensitive and so real, it can be a really beautiful opportunity for connection. But this friend of mine mentioned, like, instead of open and honest communication, I would have actually just given the advice for them to say that they want to try something different together. Because imagine what the man's feelings are going to be knowing that like his girlfriend has been faking it for the last 3 years. And that's such a huge problem because we get so worried, especially women with men, about like the man's feelings that, if we really want to restructure sexual dynamics in bed, like, don't try to bring in a different angle because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I don't think that's sustainable long-term for a good sex life. And when I did the poll, like 25% of the people said that they would recommend suggesting something new in bed. And then I remember the second part of the poll was like, what would you continue to do? It's like, I would continue faking it. Like 10% said they'd continue faking it. So, you just notice like how much shame people hold around this and how worried they get about their partner's feelings.
I'm curious, did you poll, I think I participated in that poll, by the way, but I was curious did you poll the partner whose partner has been faking orgasms? Like, how would you feel if your partner came to you and said, I've been faking my orgasms for the past XYZ years?
I did. So it was, if your partner had been faking it, how would you want them to approach you? And like 30% said,
lie to me.
Tell me that we want to try something new.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I also it was a non-gendered question. So just wanted to see how that would, come about. But it's crazy. We really have so much hiccup around this.
Yeah. And it's funny to me because I feel like, and I'm curious for you, since starting my brand and this work and doing this work, I have definitely opened up my own perspectives around sex and beliefs and like communicate. And like, it's improved my sex life, my communication life. It's improved all of my relationships, not just like romantic or sexual. I was curious of how has it affected your relationship? And you mentioned like your partner being like, you were very vocal and straightforward. Had you already started your brand when you and your husband were dating, or like, has he been a part of this process with you, or?
Yeah, he's been a part of the process since the beginning. We had already been together for a couple of years. Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily impacted other like relationships of mine. I mean, I definitely have more friends that reach out and ask for advice.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like structurally changed how I relate to other people. For me, it's really been like a shift in my romantic relationship. And if we have any problems, like, we're able to talk about it in a very calm manner where things don't get out of hand. We don't hurt each other. It's a very like real and raw and understanding conversation.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break. Back in 2012, I made the bold decision to ditch traditional shampoo, and I've never looked back. How did I do it, you ask? With Hair Story New Wash. This product is not just a shampoo or conditioner, it's a unique all-in-one solution that gently cleanses your hair while maintaining its natural balance. No more harsh chemicals stripping away your hair's vitality. Hair Story New Wash uses a carefully crafted blend of essential oils, aloe vera, and fatty acids that cleanse and nourish your hair without any of the harmful stuff you find in traditional products. Here's a little secret. I used to work at Hair Story from 2013 to 2017, and even after that, I couldn't find anything that compares. This is a product I truly believe in, and that's why I'm excited to share it with you today. As a listener of our podcast, by using the link we provided in the episode notes, you'll get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase of Hair Story New Wash. Say goodbye to the shampoo bottle clutter and hello to healthier, more vibrant hair with Hair Story New Wash. Click the link, enjoy the discount, and give your hair the love it deserves.
Not all lubes are created the same. Here at Head South, we've worked diligently to pare down the ingredients so there is no fuss and no unnecessary bits and bobs. Head South Intimacy Serums make it simple and easy for you to reduce friction and enhance pleasure. Listeners can get 20% off their first order of a starter kit using the code PODCAT24. That's PODCAT24. And now, back to the episode.
So I'm curious, we're big fans of Esther Perel.
Yes.
She speaks a lot about the importance of maintaining a sense of mystery and individuality in relationships. How do you advise couples around that, the balance of being close, but also individuation that allows for that kind of desire?
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, have activities that you do individually. Have your own hobbies. My husband is a cyclist. He does that. I remember one time I was like, do you want me to cycle with you? And he's like, no, I'd like to keep that to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine because it just, for me, cycling feels like such a big hurdle. It's just, it's too many moving parts at once to, buy the bike and like start training and all the different things. Like 1/4 of his closet is biking clothes. Just, I'm not interested in it. That's for him. And I have my activities as well. And also making sure that you make like one-on-one time with your girlfriends or your guy friends, whatever, and go out separately. I think that is just like the basis, the simplest thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, I think part of the mystery is also making time to try new things together. I really think that like good sex is starting with including novelty outside of the bedroom. So one thing that we do, this is actually from Tatiana from the Bedside podcast. I heard her mention this once and I implemented it with my husband, which is twice a month. We have a surprise date where one night I organize it, the other night he organizes it. So we just it's in the agenda. We know when it's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen. So if I'm responsible for it, I'll organize it. One activity that we recently did that was super fun was we went to Happy Medium, which for the people who aren't aware, it's like a casual art club for non-artists, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
normal people that aren't necessarily, drawing. I mean, they do have more advanced classes, but like we did a figure drawing class and it was just so much fun to do a new activity together and then try a new restaurant in the neighborhood. And like he had no idea what was planned. And I think these are like these small moments where you're just like learning something new or doing something new together that can really spark that desire and that mystery. And I think it's also about asking better questions. Like we very much just at the end of the day, how was your day? And part of the desire and the mystery comes from curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just like, how was your day? But, did you learn anything new today? Like what surprised you about your day? And try to really listen and like ask further questions after that. I think we just kind of take it for granted at the end of the night. Sometimes we truly are pretty burnt out and tired. But instead of sitting in front of the TV and like zoning out,
Mm-hmm.
finding the time to like touch each other. That's another point. A lot of couples in long-term relationships stop touching each other unless sex is initiated, and that can generate a lot of resentment by the partner who has a lower desire generally. And so they always think that like, oh, like my partner is going to touch me now just because he or she wants sex.
Right.
And touch is something that increases your bond. It lowers stress. So make the time to cuddle. The Gottman Institute recommends 20 minutes a day. I understand that not everybody wants to cuddle 20 minutes a day, but I think it's important for you to make time to hold hands, hug, caress, find a way to get that skin on skin contact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that my husband and I do. And I think it makes a really big difference for our sexual connection.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just driving, my partner and I are in a long distance relationship. And when I was visiting him last week and I was driving and like being able to just put my hand on his lap and vice versa, like while you're driving and just touch your partner's knee or like their lap it's such a nice feeling. And that skin to skin contact does make a difference. And I think that's true of like when couples get like swept away with like the day to day and the stress, they start to not touch as much. And then the only, like what you were saying, like the touch is an initiation of sex. And when someone has a different libido or isn't in the mood, it then starts becoming like a recoil from your partner versus like just connecting, like in the same way that you would say like, how was your day? But like, how was your day? And like hug them. How was your day? And like grab their hand, like really, really physically connect with your partner. So my next question is, how can couples navigate the differences in their sexual desires and kind of find a satisfying middle ground?
That's great. I just recently launched a course on low libido. It's called The Art of Sexual Desire. And that's because the number one question I get is, how do I feel more desire, especially in a long-term relationship? And I think the foundation is for you to sit down and think about like, what are the best sexual experiences that you've had and the worst sexual experiences that you've had, and like in detail, what made them so great and what made them so bad.
Uh-huh.
And you start understanding what are the things that you need in place in order for you to be able to get in the mood and for you to experience arousal at each stage of the sex script, right? Like initially when somebody initiates sex or you're trying to initiate, and then you're processing like, okay, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? And then you're going to get into foreplay, and what does, foreplay that really fulfills you entail? And then what does the main act look like? It's not always penetration. What do you want for, your aftercare, spending time after sex? Like thinking about the whole arc of the sex script makes a really big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And reevaluating that over time, because, obviously through different moments of your life, you're going to need different things. So for example, if you're somebody who's really, really stressed right now with work and it's been killing your libido, is there a way where you can decompress on a Saturday and find time to connect with each other and to be present and to explore non-sexual ways to touch each other? So there's the erogenous zone exercise where you sit down face to face and, you're touching different erogenous zones that are not related to your genitals, and spending time in each one with each other to find out like what it is that you need to generate that arousal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important. I mean, it goes back to touch really at the end of the day, but like, if you have kids, do you need the kids to be out of the house? Do you need the bedroom to be organized? It's so important for you to get clear on what are the contexts that work and don't work for you, and then communicate that with your partner. And the reason why I don't talk so much about like trying new things in bed is because I think I think we overestimate how much that really impacts versus how much the other parts of our lives can really impact, our experience in bed. Because sometimes just really good sex is like that connected sex where you're looking like eye to eye and you're both very present and you're not really thinking about anything. You're just like feeling the sensation, and you may be doing some of the same positions you always have, but like you feel very connected. You feel like one in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you do want to try new things, so many people don't use lube, head to head south and like try some new things.
Yeah.
Incorporate that, see what you like. Different types of lube apply to different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So try it out, explore, try different toys, see what works for you. And like, don't be shy about trying something and not liking it. Because I think that's part of it. It's like, it's play, it's exploration. It's totally okay if you try something and you don't enjoy it, or you both have this. So like for me and my husband, you know, when we first started going out, he had purchased some cuffs, but we didn't, like, I had never used them. He had never used them. And I just remember being like, okay, like, let's try this. And we had no clue what we were doing, and we couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
Like, it was hilarious. And like, it clearly ended up not being an erotic, like, experience for us, but it was just so much fun to like look at each other in the beginning of our relationship and be like, okay, I have the freedom to like try something new and not be judged. And like, we can laugh at it and we can move forward. And I think that's just really important for you to have, especially when you've been together for a really long time and you feel like things can get pretty predictable. Yeah. I mean, recommendations across the board, but like, it really is about thinking about what works for you, and then like not taking too seriously what you're trying in bed and being open-minded.
I love that. I think exactly to your point, I recently was on a podcast where we were talking about that, of like, yes, you can do like the high level clickbaity magazine tips and tricks of like how to do this or spice up your love life. And those are great. And like incorporating lube, trying toys. But I like the approach of like, it's a holistic experience, and like holistically in your environment, how do you set the conditions for you to feel the most sensual, the most present, the most vulnerable? And yeah, it might be like the dog, like maybe the dog, like subconsciously the dog watching you have sex makes you uncomfortable, or like you can hear the kids in the house, whatever it is, like really creating the container for you to experience the best sex. And I love that. I've never done that, and I'm going to do it now, of like writing out the best sex and the worst sex. I've done an audit of like previous lovers, but I haven't done like just the sex experience and kind of auditing what felt really great and what was like not so great, and what were the conditions around that. Like whether it was like the way that I interacted with that partner, the way that I felt, where I was at in my life as well.
Absolutely.
I think we forget too that we are seasonal beings. And so even just like the season, like sometimes I feel more sexy in the spring than like in the heat of the summer. Like how I have sex and what I want to do during sex is different just based on seasonality too sometimes, and like the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that Dr. Emily Nagoski mentions in her book, Come Together. There are 3 shared characteristics that couples with lasting sexual connection have. One of them is they're, really good friends that trust each other. And the second one is that they prioritize sex, but it's absolutely normal that you're going to have periods in your life where you're not going to be able to prioritize it. And so to your point, one thing that she recommends is for you to both just recognize that right now is not a time where sex is a priority, and that's totally okay. And once this time passes, you are going to make the effort to come back and find each other again. Right? So that's the second point. And then the third point is that you've recognized that you've been following other people's models of how your relationship and your life should be like, and you decide to create your own, which I think is beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is your advice then for people who are experiencing a desire discrepancy? And I've experienced this in previous relationships where all of a sudden you just kind of stop having sex and then think it's normal. Like, oh, we've just been together so long, we're not having sex, and everyone just puts their heads in the sand and like does their thing and is, like masturbating in the other room and like not even communicating with your partner kind of stuff. How do you advise people to kind of reconnect or like bridge that gap that's been created? And sometimes it's for long periods of time where people just kind of become best friends and roommates.
Absolutely. So it obviously depends on like what you're going through, but starting with, the non-sexual things, like, are you doing the surprise dates? Are you making an effort to make your partner feel desired? The last time foreplay begins when the last time you had sex ends. So how are you treating each other on a day-to-day basis? Are you providing these pockets for like erotic connection, which is something that Esther Perel mentions, right? Are you sending them a text message in the middle of the day? Like, I can't wait to see you tonight. Are you making these small gestures that makes them feel loved and desired and seen and heard? You know, are you taking the time to like physically connect? I know that sometimes you can feel so comfortable with your partner that you kind of just take these things for granted, or it becomes almost like too cute, too sweet, you know? And then I would say like do the audit that we just mentioned for understanding like what makes good sex for you really, really good. Understand where's that gap that you need a bridge in your relationship that may not be present. Like, what is it about the sex that you're having that's just not sparking that desire for you? And is there any way that you can schedule sex in a way that it doesn't feel like it's necessarily homework or that it feels like rigid, but instead it's an opportunity for you to try new things that you wouldn't otherwise? That's the part about scheduling that I really love. So are you going to wear a lingerie? Are you going to have time to like set the mood and use a massage oil and try to tie each other up, or blindfold and use a feather to like stroke it across your skin, and just try to find different ways to generate that arousal, or like, again, like the erogenous zone exercise for you to really connect one-on-one and spend time in exploring other ways that you can arouse each other. I once did a live with Keanu Reeves from Euphoria Wellness. And one thing that she loves doing with her partner is they go on dates where they pretend. It starts off as a pretend and then it turns into the real deal, but where you pretend that you're like obsessed with each other, sort of like that new relationship energy, you know? And I left that live, and I'd already been with my partner for a few years. So definitely no new relationship energy there. And I implemented it that night at a dinner date that we went on at a restaurant. And the bartender was like, how long have you guys been together? Like, did you guys just start dating? Aww. And it's real. Like when you start putting in that energy, it really turns into something that is tangible, like where you're both suddenly like, whoa, where did this energy come from? You know, this feels so good to like feel so desired. For everybody, it's different because it's hard to give like a broad piece of advice because it really depends on what people are specifically going through. But I would say that those are some like good tips to get started for sure.
What are your long-term goals for Wonderlust? So you have the deck, you have a course, and then you're doing panel talks at Soho House. Where else do you see the future of intimacy education evolving to?
I want to continue building out more courses. I am just really, really passionate about education. I think that's what's truly lacking in the space. And I know we have we have more and more educators online, which I think is great because each educator speaks in a different way and people will, you know, be attracted to listening to that person because of their style. So I think having more educators is great. It's really important. So I want to continue building out the courses. I want to continue doing the panels because I think that the IRL experience makes a really big difference. People crave that, and just bringing experts on that are going to be able to open up and talk about it makes such a big difference. And then, I mean, eventually I want to have a podcast, but that's a little bit farther down the road. So yeah, for now, that's what's in place.
Amazing. And is there anything we didn't discuss that you'd like to address before we kind of sign off?
I think we have been brought up to think that sex should be effortless and that chemistry is something that like either you have or you don't have. And I really believe that it's a choice. So some relationships are not worth saving, but if you really love your partner and you want to make this work and they also want to make it work because it's a two-way street, like I think it's absolutely possible for you to both put in the work and like choose each other every day and rebuild your erotic connection and be kind to each other and feel safe to explore new things. So I really think it's a choice and I think it's absolutely possible. I think sometimes we just leave it too much up to chance and then we get lazy about it. Like we're humans and we just get so lazy about, we can even get lazy about our nutrition, our workouts and all of that. But I think we put in more effort to add in more variety there than we do with our sex life and our relationships, our emotional connection. So I think it's really important to prioritize that and like put in the effort.
I think I fully agree with you. And I think also just giving your partner the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of like the apprehension to communicate desires or even explore, to be like, hey, I listened to this podcast and I think you should listen to it too. And like, let's get this game, is a fearful thing. And it's also like you're predicting that your partner would be rejecting that or like be opposed to it. And I do have to say, my partner, like last year when I brought up playing this game, like I wanted to do this last year and like interview you and record with him. And he wasn't ready to do that. Like he was kind of apprehensive. And then we were talking about it last night after we recorded and he was like, I'm really glad we did that. And he's like, I know I wasn't ready a year ago, but I feel like this is a good point in place in our relationship to kind of discuss some of these things more openly. And so that feels really great. And I think what would your advice be for people who have that kind of apprehension around exploring these things?
Well, I mean, with the card deck specifically, it's the card that asks the question, not you, which I think takes a lot of pressure off of your back. And it's great. And then there's a question that you don't want to answer or that feels off for you, which is totally normal for that to happen. And you can just set it aside. There's so many other questions. I think if you want some extra help because you think your relationship matters, there's no shame in investing in a sex coach or a sex therapist, depending on your needs. I would say you want to be with a partner who long-term is going to be open to feedback in and out of bed. And I think it's the more that you normalize that, like sooner in your relationship, the easier it's going to be, because then it's also not just always going to be tied to the negative stuff. And I think that's the problem, is that we talk about sex as though it's always in a negative context. And like, if you start normalizing, like, that felt really good, I enjoyed it when you did this, or when you grabbed me like that, and you compliment them and insert that like every time this comes up, it's not always going to be like, oh, here we go again. Like, we need to improve something else. You know, it becomes just like a regular conversation, like you're at the grocery store. So
trying to decide what to have for dinner.
Totally. And like anything else in life, when you try a new activity, so you're learning how to open up about sex or try new things, like it's going to be hard, period. Like, it's totally okay. Like, feelings may be temporarily hurt, but the benefits that you'll have in the long run are so much richer that it's worth the risk.
How do people find you and connect with you and take your course and purchase the game?
So my website is Wonderlust with an O.co. And my handle is Natassia Miller, and Wonderlust handle is @JoinWonderlust.
I want to thank you so much. You were the first person I ever met in the sexual wellness industry. We both ended up at a Female Founder World event. And I literally like just started doing Head South, and I showed up, I checked in, and the person at the door was like, oh, there's someone else here who's in sexual wellness. It might have been Jasmine who said, like, there's someone else here in sexual wellness. You should find them. And then we were by the snack table, and you were the first person that said hello to me. And I am so grateful for that interaction and meeting you. And it speaks to, I think, and you probably have the same experience of, in this industry, it is so growth and expansive. And people are so supportive. There's very little gatekeeping. And I've been very grateful for the connections I've made with other female founders in the broader spectrum, but also within sexual wellness, because I felt so supported in this community. And so I'm very grateful that I always like say you're the first person, like when I meet new people and I tell them about Wonderlust and you, I'm always like, she's the first person I met. And it was so wonderful to be like connected to you, receive that kind of warmth. And we've met up a few times, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that memory.
Thank you. Special thanks to all of our guests. Head South is hosted by Kat Meyer, produced by Isis Barlow, edited by Megan Hook, with music by Lily Rezi Rothman, graphics by Ella Chodos Irvine, cover art by Gina Ship Casey, and intro by Murph Meyer.
If you're looking for me,